Over the next 3 days, our principals and learning leaders will be focusing on looking at how we can close some of the learning gaps that were produced from our spring closure during the COVID-19 situation. This will allow us an opportunity to flash back to what our students may have struggled with or missed, as well as flash forward to how we can support those students in closing those achievement gaps and learning gaps for the students. The next 3 days during our professional development time, we will spend time with the protocol, dealing with the flashback and flash forward, as well as a common unit planner and pacing guide that will allow us to address those gaps as we take a closer look. In the midst of every crisis lies great opportunity. Will Richardson, an author of Why School, recently posted a blog post about how can we walk lightly through the portal. He talks about having big questions about what comes after. And in this regards, he refers to a metaphor of a portal being extremely compelling. He indicates that we have a stark choice that is staring all of us, educators especially, in the face. And that as he works with groups of educational leaders and teachers to identify what John Nagel calls opportunity narratives, he finds that we have choices to make. Some of those choices are what are sacred aspects of school that we should carry on with us to the other side. What are the new stories that we can imagine for our work in the future, ones that we are willing to fight for, and what are carcasses and dead ideas that we should be leaving behind? It's pretty easy to name those parts that we find sacred in our schools and our experiences that we want to bring with us as we walk lightly through the portal. Those are those relationships with our students that we build. It's those caring relationships with those individuals. It's that sense of community and belonging. It's that curiosity and creativity and joy that comes with truly deep and powerful learning. To see this portal in front of us is to also see the opportunity of this moment. We are not returning to a normal future or a normal school. Nothing that we return to will be of that. We have a million forks and paths in front of us. And so our task is to choose wisely, to choose a new narrative of the school and education that we absolutely fight for in the way that we serve our kids, our communities, and learning. Our most vulnerable students with special needs, poverty, minority students, and our younger students are often the most impacted with interrupted schooling. We already know that students have a summer slide or a summer learning loss, and that is without having a global pandemic that forced our schools to close the last 3 months. The research of summer slides then is multiplied by the crisis learning, which will even cause more loss of learning for our students. Summer loss is generally pronounced with a loss in math, facts, spelling, and procedural skills. Students with reading difficulties have a greater decline in those reading skills than students who had average or above reading skills. Most importantly, our socioeconomic students, our higher socioeconomic students, return to school with a considerable educational advantage over those of lower socioeconomics. Additionally, the achievement gaps between racial and economically disadvantaged students are present at the start of kindergarten, already suggesting the family environment outside of the school is primarily a source of early achievement gaps in math and in reading. A study out of NWA, which is part of the MAP assessment, provided some data that they connected to that summer slide, and looking at that, they were able to say or find that in the fall of 2020, roughly 70% of the learning gains in reading will have occurred for our students. However, in mathematics, students are likely to show even more learning gaps, with that only being 50% of the learning gains, and in some cases, nearly a full year behind of what we would have observed in normal conditions. You can access that full report with the link below here from NWA. But let's take a look closer at those charts and graphs that deal with forecasting out the reading and the mathematics. The largest declines in reading and math occur at the lower grades, such as grades 3 through 5, and especially in mathematics. They have two lines on this graph that focus on the COVID slowdown and the COVID slide. When you look at the COVID slowdown, It's not as projected to be as bad from the school closure in March or mid-March to the last day of school. However, when you get and dig deeper into the COVID slide, it shows a significant decrease in both reading and math compared to the typical growth or summer loss that our students would normally experience. This obviously tells us that we won't be back to school as normal. And now we have to figure out how we are going to close those learning gaps for students. Some other information that is important for us to take a look at is basically looking at the work that we provide for students and how it is aligned to our grade level standards that we're teaching. We choose at every level of education things that help to perpetuate a cycle of inequity and mediocrity in our schools. The research out of the Opportunity Myth, or TNTP, Reimagined Teaching, conducted research that found 71% of students succeed on their assignments, but that only 17% of those assignments met grade level standards. Obviously, this results in students not being prepared for college level work because of the work and practice that we gave them was lower than the bar that we wanted them to reach. And this research was conducted before the pandemic. So it's really our job to kind of upend this opportunity myth and make sure that the work that we give to students is meaningful, relevant, and rigorous for those students to accomplish. In one of the books that our mathematics department at the high school took a look at, called Catalyzing Change in High School Mathematics, Initiating Critical Conversations, it indicated that students in the privileged top track experience math instruction that cultivates their math identities, their conceptual understanding, and especially critical problem solving and thinking skills. However, students in the lower track tend to focus on rote procedures with instruction devoting little or no attention to developing the math is something I can do attitude. The replication of this experience year after year has long-term negative effects on student learning outcomes. It actually becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy for our students. Tracking students into weak or low quality and dead-end course pathways creates gaps that just continue to widen. Plus, it puts students further and further behind in the curriculum, leading to what is commonly referred to as an achievement gap, but probably should be more accurately reflected as an opportunity gap. So in reality, achievement gaps are going to occur because of COVID-19, but it's our job as educators to ensure that they don't become opportunity gaps for our students. It's our job to ensure equity for all students by engaging all students in higher levels of learning. As we take a closer look at the achievement gap versus the opportunity gap, here are 3 graphs that show more information related to socioeconomic groups as well as ethnic groups. The first graph talks about compared to classrooms with low-income students, classrooms with primarily high-income students tended to receive 2 times more grade-appropriate assignments. And then also taking a look at that in terms of grade-appropriate lessons, compared to classrooms with low-income students, classrooms with higher-income students tended to have 5.4 times more grade-appropriate lessons. And finally, the last graph that's included here is related to student performance on standardized tests by letter grade and student race ethnicity. So you can see white students are in the green tracking line, and students of color are in the blue or green color. So students of color received grades that less accurately reflected their mastery of rigorous content as measured by multiple types of assessments that they would have taken. So ultimately, what is our focus and what do we need to do as we're looking to close these learning gaps through the PCSD Power Standard Flashback and Flash Forward? It's really that every student should have access to grade-appropriate assignments, strong instruction, deep engagement, and teachers with high expectations every day in every class, regardless of their race, ethnicity, or any other part of their identity. And so it's our job to help those students have that growth mindset, to believe that they can and will be able to do the learning that we put in front of them with those high expectations. Our work of focusing on our 4 critical PLC questions: what do we want students to learn? How will we know that they have learned it? What will we do if they have not learned it? What will we do if they have mastered it? As well as our focus on the 3 big ideas of PLCs, with the focus on learning, the building of collaborative teams, and the focus on results will help to support us on closing the learning gaps that we experienced from our spring closures to fall as we reopen schools. As a district, we are going to be able to focus on collaboration with our teams to benefit all students, examine the truly essential learnings of our district power standards and what students missed from the spring that now we will have to focus on for the fall. And ultimately, we will utilize protocols with our collaborative teams and vertical teams to identify the power standards we weren't able to provide during school closure or that might need more support in the next grade level, as well as have conversations around unit planning and pacing guides to ensure we are able to meet students' needs of those power standards that we have identified. Using a soccer term, settle the ball, Brene Brown recently wrote a blog post which helped focus on educators moving from fear, anxiety, and scarcity to proactively thinking and collaborating together to develop a learning gap plan to help students with what they need. So it's our time to position our focus by seeing the learning field and decide where we need to go next. By collaborating together with our teams, we can develop that plan on how to close those learning gaps to prevent even more achievement or opportunity gaps from happening for our Pulaski students. Teachers have that self-efficacy to make this happen. Let go of the fear, the anxiety, and the scarcity to make this happen, because we know that more heads working together make the work even better. So let's dig into the PCSD Power Standards protocol with the flashback and flash forward. The process that we will be using within your collaboration teams and then your vertical teams is a protocol that we will be flashing back and flashing forward on the district power standards that your teams created the past 2 years. Our step 1 within your collaborative teams will be to get clear on the current status by flashing back. Later, you will meet with your vertical teams, which are your grade level teams either below or above you, to focus on step 2, which is to get clear on the most important prerequisite skills, and that is the part that we call flashing forward. And later this week, we will talk about step 3, which is looking at the learning progression, the pacing, and the unit planning to ensure that we are incorporating the missed or lacking power standards from spring closure into your upcoming lessons. Just a reminder that we have the power standards that you created the past 2 years for the district, which we'll want you to look back at as you flash back and flash forward in your discussions. We also have another powerful tool that we created in math, which were called the safety nets. Elementary also has the K-5 math pacing guide, which is able to provide you the scope and sequence of the math throughout the year aligned to your power standards as well as the other supporting standards. These allow you to see what your grade level has determined to be the essential standards for all students, as well as the grade level prior to your grade level and the one after your grade level. So all 3 of these links will be important for your work as you move with your teams. First steps of completing the protocol is to complete with your grade level and your team members that have worked on the document. It might be best to start a contact person that the other grade levels can reach out to if they have questions once the school year begins. For elementary, the focus areas for the content will be ELA and math when meeting with collaboration teams as well as with the vertical meetings on Thursday. We will have you complete these as a building team rather than district grade level teams, but of course focusing on the power standards that you all work together as grade level and content teams and narrowed down for ELA and math. Be sure to refer back to the PCSD K-12 Power Standard document as well as the safety nets or pacing guides when having discussions to flash back to school closure in spring for our return to this fall. Also, as I mentioned, elementary math does have the pacing guides, which are important documents to guide your conversations. Our K-5 specialists should also be meeting as the teams with your PE or your colleagues with PE, music, art, and Spanish to discuss your power standards as you flash back and flash forward. Obviously, your approach to the protocol is a little bit different since you tend to be the teacher that has those students from K-5, and so you'll take a look at those as teams across the district. And for our 6-12 teachers, you'll be focusing on the content areas taught for your protocol. You could do this for each of the courses that you teach as a collaborative team to prep for those vertical team meetings that will happen on Thursday when you're meeting with them, or generally the courses that feed into the course that you teach. Also, a few things as you dig into this, when you look at the previous teacher circled area here, you'll want to focus on which power standards are you most concerned about students struggling with going into the next grade level or course based on the school or based on spring school closure. Data can also be very useful in determining where students left off last year in your class and should be utilized in the discussions about what students might struggle with the most as they're entering into the fall of 2020. Again, refer back to those K-12 power standards that we created here in the district, which you agreed upon as being the most essential learnings for your courses and your content areas. We want to also remind you to keep the power standards to 3 for each of your course content areas that students may have struggled with the most, completely missed with the school closure, or simply just need more support in order for them to be successful in the 2021 school year and to help in closing that learning gap. The circled area also pertains to our special education teachers on this slide. Those teachers should work with the classroom teachers on which power standards they see special education students struggling with the most. This protocol is not a focus on specific students, but is on the essential learnings or power standards that we have agreed to being the most important for all students to learn at high levels of learning. These may end up being similar to what the regular ed teachers have chosen, or maybe more scaffolding or prerequisite skills that you find are lacking for our students in order to accomplish those power standards. Again, we want you to limit it to 3 per content area so that it's easier to focus and have a laser length focus for the upcoming year. In this case, less is more to help us in closing those learning gaps created from the spring. When thinking about your 3 and narrowing down to your 3 power standards per content area, keep these things in mind. They're so important that you'll spend a lot of time teaching it, you'll spend time assessing it, you will have data-driven conversations about it with your teams, you'll intervene on it as well as provide enrichments or extensions on it, and a student just can't move on without that content. So on August 26th from 7:30 to 9:45, this is when the vertical team meetings will be occurring. Collaborative team time for completing the flash forward and flash forward part and discussion sections will occur. So from 7:30 to 8:30 with the previous grade level team, K1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, 11 will take place, and then followed by 8:45 to 9:45 with the next grade level team. So grades 1 through 2, grades 3 through 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11, 12 will meet. Elementary teachers again will focus on ELA and math. Elementary specialists will meet together, and 6-12 teachers will focus on their content areas. You will share your Google Doc of the PCSD Power Standards Flashback and Flash Forward with the team that will be receiving the students, so discussions can occur about immediate prerequisite skills and concepts that need to be taught by the receiving teacher and need to be included in his or her pre-instruction planning. Discussions should also be around helping them focus on the when, where, and how they can help address and build a bridge from those spring learning gaps to returning to school in the fall. There should also be conversations on what best or next strategies or practices can be used by the receiving teacher to help support those students learn these power standards that students didn't get during school closure or that they struggled with. In both cases, with your grade level collaborative teams and with the vertical meetings, there's a section to help you gather notes about the discussions you have as teams. There are some guiding questions to help drive some of those conversations. Be sure to record them in the discussion notes so that later on or after these meetings that you've had, you're able to recall why certain power standards were chosen in the PCSD power standard flashback, flash forward documents, as well as the assessments and data results that drove the discussions and other items that your teams or vertical teams discussed during these meetings. The next several slides have some examples of the flashback, flash forward protocol from another district or from a presenter from MindGap's solution tree. These are for different content areas at the elementary level, but at least give you an idea on slides 21, 22, 23, 24, and 25. So just to recap what's going to be happening in the next couple of days with your professional development. So hopefully with our presentation now, you have a better idea of the flashback and flash forward protocol that we'll be using in the district to help us in looking at those potential learning gaps that occurred from the spring closure. So there are 3 meetings during the PD days that we have you focused on closing those gaps. First, you will meet with your grade level or content team at your building level to work on the flashback portion of the protocol. Sometime today, there'll be 2 hours scheduled with your teams for that to happen between 11:30 and 3:30, and this will help to prepare you for those vertical meetings, which will happen tomorrow. As I mentioned, tomorrow will be when the vertical meetings will happen. The second meeting time will be from 7:30 to 9:45. Again, these can be done in person if you're within the same building, or they can be also done virtually, especially when we're looking at those crossovers between the areas like 5th to 6th grade or 8th to 9th grade. Team leaders should take the lead on arranging where and how the meetings will take place and get those set up this afternoon so that you're prepared for tomorrow. So from 7:30 to 8:30, the following teams will be meeting for their discussions: kindergarten and 1st grade, 2nd and 3rd grade, 4th and 5th, 6th and 7th, and 8th and 9th. And in that level, there were reps that were chosen, so it potentially might not be the whole team that's meeting. And then 10th and 11th grade. Grade 12 teachers, you're not involved in the first set of meetings today. The next set of meetings from 8:45 to 9:45 will be grades 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, 6, which will also have reps that were chosen for ELA and math to meet with the middle school teachers. 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11, 12. Kindergarten teachers, again, are not involved in these meetings at this time because of their previous meetings. Then your third meeting for PD, which is the follow-up to the Power Standards Learning Gap conversation, will be on the unit planning guide and templates, and then you'll have work time with your teams to plan how we're going to address these learning gaps that we have identified through the flashback and flash forward. Finally, this is an opportunity for you to be able to ask questions of your building level administrator or learning services if we happen to be within your meeting today. But if you do have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to your building administrator or to learning services, and we can help to answer those questions.